Monica, hello.
Hi, John.
Well, viewers, hello as well. We wanted to get out there and, obviously it's been some time since we've gotten to the people and put the words out to the people. But there's been some, intentionality behind that, I think, in light of recent events, recent terrible and heartbreaking events. The conversation has shifted in the world, and I thought it would be a good time to just kind of listen for a little bit and not put our own conversations out there, but maybe let the conversation point to what was going on. So that's kind of been where I've been at in the past week, and listening and trying to process and making moves. So we wanted to preface this topic with the understanding that we were talking about different things at that time, but I think that it's very, very pertinent still to today and the national conversation shifting. Am I right, Monica?
I mean, you're definitely right on. And just thinking that, it aligns with one of our goals of this podcast from the get-go is just, making connections, maintaining connections, and being able to have a space to have productive conversation. And so we're all looking to have healthy growth. That's something that you and I talk about often, John. And so this conversation with Elle about communication is very on par with all of that. So hopefully the good conversation and introspection just continues.
So thank you guys so much for listening. If you have checked out the podcast in recent weeks, thank you so much for listening. Clearly, the spirit of it all is that we don't have all the answers. We don't have the best things to say, but I think that we're working towards, like Monica said, growth, and we're hoping that this can be a place that helps you start those healthy, productive, positive conversations with people. So. Without further ado, Arielle Hebert. Hello. Come on, everybody.
Hello, John.
How's it going, Monica?
It's really wonderful. We're starting to have some summer-like weather. As you can see, I'm enjoying the sights and scenes, and so it's really great, and it's great to see you.
It's good to see you. How was your Memorial Day?
It was wonderful. It was actually extremely exciting. One of my best friends got engaged, and so we surprised her with a little celebration of that, socially distanced and appropriate, but it was quite fun. But I was up in the Northwoods for that.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I saw an article on the NPRs that being in the woods out and about is like one of the safest activities you can do, which makes sense.
Yes, it does. And also enjoyable. I also think that there's so many people doing it now, though, that it kind of makes me mad to be in the woods. I feel like people litter and they overrun the trails, and it gets me to my core a little bit.
Humanity is the virus.
Exactly. How about you? What were you up to?
I did a whole lot of nothing. I was up way too late the night before, so then I woke up around 10:30, and I was like, this is a good time, and then I ate something, and I was like, what'd be better? Sleep. So then I went back to sleep for another couple hours, so I didn't really get rolling until 1 p.m. And then I just hung around and watched a movie, and then I worked out, and that was pretty much the day.
Great.
Yeah. Very ho-hum.
Restful, relaxful.
Yeah. So we've got, I'm just, again, very excited for our next guest, because we're talking about communication, which is, I think, obviously something we all do all the time. But I think she can bring a very unique perspective to it, because she is an accomplished and published writer. She is also a really good friend of mine. We've known each other for about 18 years. and so became friends in middle school, carried that strong friendship on all the way through adulthood. Truly just like one of the most amazing, wonderful humans I've ever met. And the cool thing is whenever I like introduce her to people, like and throughout the time that I've known her, whenever I've introduced her, the feedback I always get is that she's like this kind, engaging, like wonderful human. And like very instantly they realize that she's just got this magnetic personality. So as long as I've known her, she's been writing. And as long as she's been writing, her writing matches her personality in that it is captivating and engaging. In addition to all that, she has been the recipient of many awards and commendations in the poetry field. She has taught courses at NC State, NC State, and yeah, I mean, she has been featured in multiple literary magazines, poetry journals, and reviews. So, and even the menu of a speakeasy in Raleigh has her work on it. So, pretty exciting stuff. We got a celebrity on our hands here, and so I am just so excited that she is talking with us today. Arielle Hebert is a wonderful friend, and I'd love to introduce her, which I just did. So here she is.
Come on, Arielle.
Hello.
Hello. Come on.
Come on, Elle.
I'm coming on.
How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, it is a pleasure.
Excited to have you.
Could you give us a little bit of a background into who you are, and what you do and what you enjoy, and we can get rolling?
Sure. I fell into poetry and writing pretty early in life. I don't think I can remember a time where I didn't really turn to that to sort of just process feelings and maybe record memories and things maybe I was afraid to forget, a feeling or an experience, and it turned into more of a passion than a pastime. It turned into something that if I didn't do it, if I wasn't writing, I was not my best self. I didn't feel great. I wasn't in my right headspace or heart space all the time. And I just found that it was a place where I wasn't just processing my world and my experiences, but sort of how other people enter and exit out of that. And now it's just something that consumes my entire life.
Very nice.
I think the moment for me that I knew writing was a permanent fixture was when I decided to get my master's degree and pursue not just writing every day and becoming a better writer just for myself, but also pursuing publications and readings and sharing with the world and building my writing community, which has just changed my entire writing life. You know, none of us does anything alone, I think, and having that community has meant everything to me. And so getting my MFA really brought that into my life, and I don't think it's in doubt anymore for me that it's meant to be here, and that I sort of got that affirmation I needed, that I was sort of doing the right thing and putting my energy where I needed to.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm just so eager to I just want to like ask you all the questions to get rolling. So I apologize. I cut you off.
Not at all.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking, we wanted to bring you on because we were talking about communication. And, you know, obviously, so Monica and I are coaches. We're trying to convey ideas and communicate to athletes to, you know, and trying to gain buy-in on those ideas. So, but at the same time, we're all communicating. You're obviously in a strong communication field. You know, what, I guess, so in terms of your writing, what ideas are you trying to convey? Is there an overall theme to your writing? Or what have you? And go.
And I guess when I think about writing as communication, I think of that sort of as maybe the second stage of that process. For me, I guess the first stage, and I hear people say this all the time too, like, oh yeah, I write poetry or I write things, but I'm never going to share that with anyone. It's just for me. It's just something I do, or they're embarrassed of it, or they don't think it's worth time or sharing, or that it's any good. And so I do think that a lot of us turn to writing at first as an intimate experience. I think even if we're about to present an idea to our bosses or our job, or in your case, to your team or your superiors, whoever that audience might be, I think in a way comes second sometimes. We're trying to process how we want to say something and what we want to say first, right? So I think it was Samuel Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who said that poetry is just the best words in the best order. And I think that's a pretty good definition for communication too. It's something that we think about hopefully before we actually say it, before we get to the point of actually saying it, right? When we want to convey something that's important or meaningful to us, I think oftentimes we prepare that, or we practice, or we write something down, or give ourselves some notes or talking points. And so in that way, I think the writing does become something that's not just for yourself anymore, but actually for communicating. And whether we're just communicating thoughts and feelings to ourselves, isn't that what we do with other people also? Is just communicating those thoughts and feelings and better understanding ourselves and each other?
Can you go in depth a little bit more about your writing process? So is it more of like you just sit down and write something and publish it, or are there different phases that you go through?
I wish it was I wish it was that way. But no, I can go through as many as 20 drafts of something before I send it out. And I think occasionally, once every 5 years or something, I might jot something down and make some minor changes and send it out for consideration. But by and large, I think I'm a revisionist. My first drafts, I don't think, are always very strong, and I often go back to revision and polish things, change order a lot, find an ending, find an entry point, things like that. When I taught academic writing, I thought about revision kind of in the same way when you're teaching essay writing is, you kind of get your meat down first. I taught this great essay, very short essay by Anne Lamott called Shitty First Drafts. And it's basically just getting something down, the meat of it, the ideas of it, not being inhibited by the voice in your head that says, this isn't good, or this isn't exactly what you want to say in this moment. It will turn into that. I think the perfect first draft is a myth of writing, especially with essays and academic writing, but with anything else too. If it's an occurrence, it's very rare, but I think of revision as something in your wheelhouse that is there to help you, not be a burden. I think a lot of people think of revision as something, and it is difficult, but I think it often yields the best products. You try something, and if you keep working on something, chances are it's not going to get worse. It's going to get better. So.
And that really, what I would imagine is take it more from that intimate feeling that you have and bring it to something that can be conveyed by your audience.
Yeah.
I'm really curious. So like in reading some of your work and some of the things that you suggested to read yesterday, I'm just immediately, like 2 lines into one of your poems, I was just like already feeling things, right? And there is a really, not just because I know you, but I think I could see so much of who you were in that. It was like very transparent and very raw and very real. And even the other poets that you suggested, I was like, again, very quickly, even if I had shields up, I would have like found the kink in my emotional armor very quickly. So in terms of the writing process and how you polish things, like I usually think of my transparency as very raw and unpolished and like just rough around the edges. So in polishing things up, how, like, I guess, how do you balance revising but also still keeping true to the intimacy and transparent nature of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Kind of coming back to the idea of writing being an intimate process, maybe first. I think that those being true to those emotions in their most raw, visceral form can be really therapeutic, and also get down some really raw emotions on the page and on the paper. But I think what I try to do with those is find what works in the poem is sometimes supporting that with some images, something concrete, something to hold on to, something to ground my reader in something that they can empathize with. I think I read something where the devil's in the details. It's if your house burns down and you say in your paper or in your poem, yeah guys, my house burned down, it's really sad and you're going to feel something from that. But if you describe rooting through the ashes, or finding mementos that you thought had disappeared, and what that discovery feels like, that joy after such destruction, those are the things that kind of humanize that experience, where it's not just about what happened, it's about connecting to something that someone else reading it, even if it's never happened to them, they're going to see a clear picture. They're going to smell those burning picture frames or bookcases. They're going to, experience something more than just you telling them what happened, if that makes sense. So when I revise, I try to add those kinds of details. Maybe things that didn't make it on the first draft. Sometimes it's just recalling memories or looking at pictures or reading articles of what's happening in the world at the time and including things like that. I find a lot of the time that I'm writing these days, COVID-19 doesn't always make a blatant appearance, but it's hard not to have that in the background because it influences so much of what we're experiencing right now and how we're experiencing that. So I hope that answers your question. I try to add things that might kind of round out that experience or that memory.
Yeah, well, yeah, I 100% answers the question. I think it also speaks to the fact, like, I don't know, there's a movie quote from a very movie, one of my favorites, but it's like, it's a goofy movie. But either way, you can read all the like volumes and volumes of books, right? Which is, I love reading, but nothing tends to make you feel things as fast, or feel good as fast, or feel something as fast as like just he was talking about like music or like
right.
But I mean poetry, really. Most poems are pretty short, like kind of a snapshot of what's going on, and you draw people in very, very quickly.
Yeah. I would even expand on that and just say art can do that, whether it's music or poetry. Even meditation is like a kind of art, I think, in that way. Anything that you can't really put your finger on and define what it is, but it gives you a feeling. It helps you process the world around you, whether it's poetry or movies. A goofy movie can obviously help us even process the world around us. So, and someone wrote that. Someone drew and wrote that. So that is all. We're all makers, creators, artists trying to understand the world better, I think.
Well, and what's interesting to me is now being influenced so much by social media and what we're putting out there, because I think it even goes beyond art, and we're putting so much content into the world, and we're putting so much voice out into the world. So what really interests me is those messages that are being portrayed by everyone just on a daily basis. And so I think a lot of times there's not much editing happening there, but it's really amazing to see, especially how those messages change for people during COVID. In that there's some that are just so full of despair, some that are really optimistic, but
it's interesting to be a recipient of so much on a day-to-day basis, and also be a little bit more mindful myself of what I'm putting out into the world.
Yeah, I think you're right about probably not a lot of revision or forethought happening with some of those messages into the void, postings into the void. But I hope that people do consider, you know, at least on Twitter, it makes you think about how many words you have to use and how many characters. That is definitely best words, best order. Am I right?
Yeah. I love the fact that step one in the process is kind of communicating with yourself, is just working that through the intimate details with you, especially in the world of social media, right? I know for myself, I read an article and I'm like, yeah, you know what? This person needs to read that. And hopefully they change their mind about it. But really that, like, I'm bypassing the first stage of the process altogether. Like I think I could personally, and probably a lot of people could be benefited by just taking the step back and be like, all right, what is this saying to me? Like, what is this? How does this resonate with me? Can I find some change in what I read? Or is this just something that's just confirming an already held belief? Can I challenge that belief? Going through that stage and those things prior to just trying to beat someone over the head was something that you found interesting.
Definitely.
Important.
I think when you're reading anything, whether it's, journalism or novels or poems or songs, you're engaging in empathy. You're reading someone else's thoughts or experiences or their views on those experiences or ideas. And so in a way, you're doing this acrobatic act where you're engaging in empathy. And if that's a person or an experience that you've never had, I think it can expand that empathy. You might not understand everything that person went through, but there are a lot of voices, I think, because social media, like Mon was saying, are out there that might not have been there 20 years ago, especially during the coronavirus and times like this where people are isolated. There's not, we can write letters, but there's even, risk and fear involved in sending mail. And so, social media and the news, I do think it's engaging us with a lot of different voices. I think ideally, when you're engaging with a piece of writing that challenges your own beliefs or even confirms them, you're still engaging in some kind of empathy. And I do think reading, there's like scientific evidence that reading increases your emotional intelligence and your empathy. It makes us better people. It makes us want to understand people better. We get into the minds of characters and other people that aren't ourselves. And I think that's healthy.